I used to be part of a black men's um, group, Black Fathers group, it was called, and it was a support group. And it was tremendous. I learned so much. I had to change my perspective on things so many times. I could say every time I went.
Hello and welcome to Obehi podcast. I'm your host, Obehi Ewanfo, and I strongly believe that everyone has a story to share. Now let's get started into this episode.
And one of the things that I learned was that the power of the story is absolutely immense. And that's the first thing. And the second thing is, who is telling the story and why? And different ways of telling the story. Excuse me. That could be through art, it could be through music, it could be through film, dance, all sorts of different narratives. And then we've just accepted the story coming to us, but we're not. And stories can be told in a very compelling and elegant way. So we take. I was just listening to Denzel Washington actually the other day, and he was talking about Steven Spielberg writing Schindler's List, and he was talking about the Italians writing films about the mafia, and then he was saying, but as Black people, there would be no one that would be able to tell the story of the feeling of a hot comb going through your hair, and that kind of thing. So it's not being. I suppose what he was saying, it's not being racist that from your culture you want to tell your story. Look, I was just hearing on telly. Have you heard of this film called Bend It Like Beckham? This is a deep film. So it's about a Sikh girl who goes to the park and plays football with the boys. But, a traditional Sikh family don't want their family to play football and don't want girls to play football. So that's the kind of essence of the film. So the film was in, I think it was like 1989 or 90. I don't know the date. That's not my specialty. Anyway, as a result of that film, there were papers being written in all sorts of universities across the world about the film. The film was written by a Sikh woman who thought that she should write this film. And there are now football teams springing up who have been that are Sikh girls that have been inspired by the film. And I thought, my God, how powerful is that? That somebody wrote a film and now they're writing university papers about it. And, it's inspired people to go down the football pitch and start playing. So I agree with you what you say about, how we get divided is A, by language, and B, by not having, a sort of military protection, which I don't know. I don't really know if I have an opinion by that. But it is about mainly communication, how we communicate, what we say, and who says it, and making it something of a story that means something to you. So I suppose that's my idea about storytelling. It's got to be us that tells the story, and this is why I like podcasts, because it's us. It's nobody else. I'm not being influenced by anybody in this room, definitely, or outside, and I guess you're not. So it's that connection, that cohesiveness that makes us feel like we're learning. And then when that happens, then we grow.
Yeah,
And
and
we
that
have
is
an opportunity then.
yeah, absolutely, and that is very powerful. It looked like a kind of a safe place where we can express ourselves. I remember that should be a couple of days ago. I was interviewing a lecturer in the US about African history. I was telling her, of course, the conversation actually went a little bit deep, and it was very interesting. A lot of people view it and continue to view it that in this space we will share this moment. If we need to cry, we cry together. If we need to shout, we shout together. This is just brother and sister relating on issues that are important to us. And of course, in this case, looking at the issue of African American, their story, your journey, where you are coming from. Because if we dig a little bit now, we see that we are coming from the same place. We are coming from the same neighborhood. Okay, it can be that, okay, your ancestors were coming from Congo, whereas mine are coming from Nigeria. But we can actually deeper on that to see that,
Yeah.
okay, we were actually coming from the Nubia world, or coming from Egypt, or coming from other part, so that we have been missing and missing and missing all along. So we are basically the same people. And this story, it is us that must tell it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I find it very, very interesting, this conversation that we have here.
I think what you said is interesting, that we are obviously separated. Obviously, we have the power now to kind of reduce that separation. We've got technology that when it works, and we've got all sorts of different types of media that we can use to tell that story. And when you were saying that, it made me think about, sometimes we're going along in life and we don't know that that thing is missing until you hear it, until you see it, until you feel it. So, and that fills in the gaps. I think the perpetual question that man will have is, who am I? Why am I here? And if those gaps of being part of something is missing, it makes it frustrating for somebody. It makes it hard to kind of really tie up who you are. I was born in England. I lived in England all of my life. I don't feel like an English person. I don't feel like it. I'm not. I don't. I'm not made to feel English. I know I'm Jamaican. I know I'm African. I know that. And even when I go to Africa and Jamaica, sometimes I'm not made to feel like that. So we have to find a way to reduce that idea of other. We have other people telling us we're other outside. We don't need to keep doing that. So I think the more things we can do, the more things we can get involved in and demonstrate in all sorts of different ways, the more we can see how much we can do, our potential, and how much we are. I mean, I always say to my I've got a lot of nieces, and I've got a daughter. And one time I was talking to my daughter, and I said, the issue is that we are so powerful, and we are so powerful together that I think it scares other people. I think that, and I think once we can let go of you being other and you being part of me, part of my family, then I think this idea of unity, I think if you central to this is love. And if you put love and unity together, right, and always come back to that base, whether we have a difference of opinion or not, I think this power is going to be immense. Look at Tyler Perry, where he's coming from. He's got one of the biggest I think it's the biggest film studios in the world. You've got football players and actors and all sorts of people, Beyonce, Jay-Z, billionaires. This is about togetherness. This is about, sometimes you have to let go to move forward. So you have to let go to learn. You have to let go to listen. And I think, coming back to the idea of storytelling is having, you and people like you having that place where we can get our story told is the thing that's another element that's going to deepen our understanding of what we are and what we're capable of.
I really appreciate that. That is important. All right, now let's get started with today's conversation, because this is part of what we are doing here now. I try to do the story, try to talk to ourselves, try to hear from ourselves, and I try to heal ourselves also, because story also heals.
Yeah.
All right. Now, give us a little background of you. Where were you born, and what was the reality around you? So let's take it from there.
Okay, so I was born in London. I was actually I think I was born in Westminster, or maybe I wasn't. I think I was. Maybe I was. But it's because I've got ideas of grandeur. So I grew up in Wandsworth in South London. My father did not live with us. I did know him, but he didn't live with us. I had at a young age, my sister came to England. That was before I was born. And then my mum sent for my brother from Jamaica. And that was definitely, they can speak for themselves, but that was a culture shock for them. And it was the happiest day for me when they came, because I had a family like that. So that was in South London. Yeah, then I went to school, and I remember that I had mixed fortunes at school, because I was really interested in lots of things, but didn't have the enough inspirational teachers to get on and kind of let me explore my full potential. So that was hugely frustrating for me. And then I left school with not many qualifications, and then I began working in set building. That's interesting, the way they tell the stories. So I built sets for a little while. Then I become interested in communication. So I did a course in communication, and that was the thing that I really loved. I loved the idea of communication. I remember my mum used to say to me, I ask too much questions, and I always want to know why this, why that, how does this work? And so I think it was like my mind and my spirit is just always searching for meaning, and to make that meaning something that makes sense, and not everything that is about is going to make sense, I suppose. So yeah, from there, what happened? Yeah, I had a few other jobs, just kind of random kind of jobs, and then what's, I suppose, in customer service, and now I ran a restaurant for a little while, and then I had a family, so I got married, and we had two children. Sadly, my wife passed away, and then I got married again, and I had
Sorry about
another.
that.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. Thank you.
Sorry.
And then so I got married again, to my wife, who's still my wife. We've been married 25 years now, and we have a son. So we've got three children and three grandchildren, another one on the way. So that's the family stuff. What I realized had been difficult is that the start that I had at school, because I didn't have any people, I didn't have enough people around me that could, I do believe in education, but I also believe in potential. And, formal education isn't everything. It is great, but it's not everything. And I think in definitely in our culture, it's given this high watermark. So why I'm saying that is because, I didn't have the opportunity to go to, I didn't know I had the opportunity, rather, to go to university or college. And sometimes I look back on that with sadness. And so when I continued my sort of career, I realized that I could go to university myself. So I went to university and I studied counseling and therapy. And at the time, I was a financial literacy trainer. And it was that work really that made me study therapy, because what I was doing, Obehi, I was talking to people about money, and I realized that this was a subject that people do not like to talk about. And then I wondered why. Why was it so bad? Why was it so hard and painful? So the groups that I ran were successful, but I wanted to know why. Again, my curiosity, why is it successful? And I think it's because of my nature, allowing people to feel comfortable to talk and explore, and kind of, I think once you do that, you kind of get things off your mind and let other people hear it, and you'll find out that other people are going through similar circumstances. Other people are doing things that are inspiring and different. So that took me on the journey of learning about therapy. I didn't become a therapist then. I just had the qualification, and then I was still doing the money management stuff. And now at the moment I work in recruitment. So again, I work. That's different, about curiosity, learning about businesses. What do businesses do? What do they need? How do you match people? How do you have sort of retention in business and stuff like that? So I work with. I've been past 2 years. I've been working with a lot with young people. That's the fascinating education system. The education get qualifications, but not about money. And you're going to get money when you get a good job. So that was interesting to me. But the education system is also not teaching them about how to get a job and what jobs there are. And it's just interesting that there's a big disconnect between, your qualifications and what happens when you get the qualifications in terms of jobs. So I see young people sit down in front of me and I'll say, what did they teach you in terms of now where you are now? And they say just about being obedient, just following the rules. And I think we're in a different space now where we do have to follow, the rules so that, they don't get arrested and hurt. But, it was a creative space where we can do a lot. So a lot of young people, I think, are lacking confidence in the job market. So really, that's where I am now. I'm working on a book with my daughter, a story book. So she's studying at the moment. So when she finishes, then we can kind of complete that. And I think as a grandfather now, which is a role which I absolutely adore. I adore that role. It's now being able to kind of transfer some of the hopes, I suppose, the experiences and some of the passions and the culture that we have in our family and as Black people, and how we've overcome things and how different things mean what they mean to us, to this generation, to give them some stuff that we didn't have as when we were growing up. There were lots of things that, as Black people, we didn't talk about, and I didn't understand why, because I'm nosy. I want to know why. So yeah, that's really why I suppose that's brought me about here.
All right, now we're going to spend some more time on your childhood now, because of course you are no longer a child now. You are a grandfather now, no? But of course, help us understand you when you were much smaller, so that other people younger who are listening to us just now can benefit from you, can make comparison. They can understand what were going on in your time compared to what is going on in their time. Of course, they have to make their own conclusion at the end of the day. So when you were growing up as a young person of African descent in the UK, how was your environment like in terms of the relationship that you had with the people, between you and the state and the society generally? Give us some curiosity.
Wow. So to be honest, I didn't know what racism was. I didn't know what it was, but I experienced it. The way in which we were treated at school, I didn't understand why we were treated different. I remember I had a friend, he was Nigerian, and the teacher came out of the class and just slapped him in his face. And I just didn't understand. Joseph, his name was. I didn't understand why. And this didn't happen to white children. So imagine being 11 or 12 and that happening. And there was no, we didn't even use the word Obehi. So that was a real challenge. Not being, a first generation of Black British, not having the sort of the depth of grounding of being here was difficult. And I think so. It just kind of like, I didn't even go home and talk about it. We grew up in a time where everything other people did was right, and we felt like we weren't listened to, and really we just had to get on. We just had to get on. So that was really tough. Um, uh, I've got to mention music. Music played a massive part in my life. I would go as far as to say almost, music is like my religion, because the music that we listened to, it encouraged us, it supported us, it made us feel like we were one. It made us learn about our history. It made us learn about um, things that were happening in the here and now. And it was limited to reggae and soul music, but it was uplifting music, and that was a massive part of my um, um, upbringing. Um, but thinking about career, I always wanted to be a photographer. That was my dream. My aspiration was
Mhm.
to, it clicked like cogs when I was about 12 or 13, is to be a photographer. And the teacher, I studied so much, and I said to the teacher, in my audacity, that I can run this class, and I want to run this class and teach everybody black and white photography, but I want you to teach me color. And he said, no. I said, I can do it. He said, no. And then I said, all right, I want to do A-level photography. And he said, no. And that was like somebody had mortally wounded me. When I went to go and speak to the careers people, they said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to be a photographer. And they said, okay, here's a company where you can do engineering. I don't know how engineering was connected to photography. So at the time, I didn't know about different careers. I didn't know that I could say no to this man. Um, I didn't know that I could be more persistent. Um, so I think, what I would say to young people now is find what you want to do and do it, and kind of, you know try to stay on track and find others that are off that ilk, that want to do that. And I think then, because that threw me off course, what I did, I learned, I tried to learn about lots and lots of different things to find out if photography is something I can't do, let me find other things to do. English, I was very good at English as well. I didn't know that you could be a writer. Nobody said that you could be a writer. Nobody said you could be a storyteller. Nobody said you could be a philosopher. Nobody said that you could be in finance, a lecturer, a scientist. I never knew these things. And that's why we need people that are doing these things, that are saying, you can do it, because it's true. It's true.
So
Um,
in terms of role model, now you are talking of something important now, which is very, very crucial to the African diaspora community, in that we need more people to come out there and become excellence in what they believe is theirs, It's not just the regular, you must be a doctor, you must be
yeah.
an engineer. If you are not there, you are a failure. No, there are people that are cut out for different things. You can even be a musician. So in terms of this role model that we need, so that our children, the young ones that are growing up, they can look out and say, okay, yes, I want to be like him. So in your case, how was it like? You made mention of the fact that nobody told you that you could be a writer here. So how was the reference for you like? And also maybe with other children that were growing up with you around in London, wherever you were.
I have to pause because you're so good. um, that's a very difficult question. So because I suppose, when I look at it now, it's different to how it was then. The reference for me, there was one reference. The reference was Muhammad Ali. He was the reference. I never saw anything like it. This was a man. This was a confident person. He was a poet. He said he wanted to change his name. He changed his name. He was, an excellent athlete. He had charisma. He was charming. He was good looking. He was the role model. You know, no, my father's passed away. No disrespect to my father, but he was like my dad. This man, I couldn't get enough of him. Um, but around us, physically around us, no. You know, because we didn't have these enough of these people. I'm sure you've heard about it. It may have even happened to you when you watch telly and there's a black person on telly. You call all your friends. Guess what? There's a black person on telly. Somebody on telly, and then you go and turn it over. And there's only 3 channels then. But now you ask me this question now, then yeah, you know, I think about my mum. I think about her stoicism. I think about her calmness. I think about her ability to drive the family and keep it together. Remember, my brother and sister were in another country, sending for them, working on her own and making us safe. She's a hero. So I could, you know, yeah, that's all I can think of. I know there were footballers that inspired us. Um, there was, yeah, not many people. Frank Bruno, the famous boxer, he grew up near where we lived, but he got kind of whisked away. So there wasn't any real pointers. You know, you could be like this. You could get into aeronautical engineering, or you could be like that. Because again, the story that was coming to us is that we are not there. We're less than, and it's these other people that do these things, and which, you know, obviously subsequently we've learned that is not true. So yeah, to answer your question, sadly, very few.
Okay, now again, for the people that are listening to us, for the younger people in the community, let's be specific on that. What is the importance of having a role model so that people can look up to them? You don't necessarily need to be in the size of Muhammad Ali now, or at least
Yeah,
within your area where you are growing up, you can have. You know, now this is important because if you live in a society, a kind of a community-based society, which is like that of Africa, you know, so maybe you are going wrong. No, somebody can correct you. Somebody can sort
yeah,
of help you out to sort of straighten your head, no, so that you don't become a gangster. You don't become a deviant, no, because when you become
mm,
a deviant, now when you become offline, you are a danger both to yourself and to the society. That is why it is the responsibility of those who have gone through the experience before to help the younger one straighten up their line. So for you to be able to do that, of course, they need to have regard for you. They need to see you as a role model. Is sort of. So I'm asking you, what is the importance of having this role model for the younger people within the diaspora community?
it's gigantic. It's gigantic to have role models in the community. And you know, one of the things that, you know, when you were talking, that I was thinking, you know, it doesn't have to be, you know, a gigantic big personality like Muhammad Ali. It can be the smaller type people that can, you know, set you back on your path. I remember my son, um, he has a piano player, African gentleman, and you know, just his spirit alone. I remember just being able to talk to him, and my son's called Jacob, being able to talk. So I think the role models don't have to be these people that are, you know, multimillionaires and actresses and big time musicians and boxers and sports people. I think everybody is. I think that's about how you conduct yourself, as a person, as an adult, as an elder. You being, you know, someone that they can talk to. They can say, you know what, can we just have a talk about this? Or you know, I can see, you know, you're not happy about this. I think seeing a reflection of you is important. And I think when we're growing up, we're always trying to find out who we are and what we can do. So role models are aunts and uncles and their cousins and brothers and sisters and mums and dads that are just doing a good job, you know. And the word you used was important, really important. Regard. Regard means to look. And I think that the role model is somebody that's doing their life. You do your life, but also they're looking out. They can see a young person, and say, you know what, this would be a really good thing for you to do to to increase your potential, I think is phenomenally important. I think as African people, that what's missing from us is this idea of the community. You know, everything we people aspire to. There is a few elements. It boils down to aspiration. It boils down to persistence, creativity. You know, hard work. I mean, in a nutshell, that's how people become elevated in their spirit, whether that's in a career, whether that's in a relationship, or whether that's just in a hobby or even in a family. So I think it's really important. But the important thing is that the people like that are able to connect. There's a program that's just come out. We just started watching it yesterday. Idris Elba, the wonderful Idris Elba, has started a boxing club, right, for
That's
young people.
interesting.
Yeah, really interesting. They're not interested in boxing. That's interesting. So interesting, all the discipline that you need for boxing, all the training, the mindset, everything. He's put them up in the house. They've got to work together. But anyway, so he is a role model. And what he's done is found a method to get back to the community, to touch. He's walking around, you know, he grew up in Hackney. He's walking around Hackney, just Idris Elba. He's in Hackney. And people are like, Idris. And he's like, all right, bruv. And he's carrying walking. So I think we as Africans have that responsibility to do our best for ourselves and our family. And then this is the next bit. And then it's how do we reconnect? How do we connect to our community so they can see, oh, it's not like I want to be like that. It's the core elements that you can take. Like I said, discipline, hard work, creativity, all of these things, which are these things that, you know, Idris is teaching these young people that they don't have. And so you want someone that's open and able to communicate about potential. So I don't think we can underestimate it. I used to think, oh, why did I keep talking about role models? Rubbish role models. What's this about? And maybe because I didn't have one. And I realized, you know, as Gandhi said, you have to be the change you want to see. So I take that very seriously.
All right. Um, Now, storytelling, we talked about it before. Anyway, before we get to storytelling just now, I want to understand what kind of story were you hearing from your parents? Because now your parents, when they are telling you story, they are telling you story of their own parent too, of their own people that have been before them, so that they tell it to you, that you have the obligation of also telling it to your children, so that your children pass it on to other children. So from you going backward now, what were you hearing from your parents? They were telling you of their own growing up, the people they met, their own parent too, and all that. Educate us about that. We're interested in your story.
This is a hard question. So, um,
Of course,
right,
parents here mean people that are in the family, not necessarily your father, no, because I understand what have happened, what you said, no, but it might be somebody
yeah,
that come from the family now, who sort of help you to understand where you are coming from. And because again, among the African diaspora community, our connection is very important. Help me with that.
okay, all right. So, I suppose the important person here is my brother. I think I was 8 or 9 when my brother came to England from Jamaica. It changed everything about my understanding about Jamaica. Um, I remember one of the first things that he used to sing Yellow Bird. I think it's Harry Belafonte sings this song, Yellow Bird. I'm not a singer, so I'm not going to try. And I was like, wow, that's a Jamaican song. Oh my God. Um, so then I realized that there's, you know, we're listen, you know this, we're people of melody. All of us Africans, we have to have melody, some kind of music. And that was like, okay, he wasn't as deep into music as me. Then he spoke about where he lived in Jamaica. that he used to leave school and then go swimming in a lake. I was like, what? And that was, again, that blew my mind. Some of the foods that he used to talk about that obviously we couldn't get. Again, that really made me get an idea, sense of connection, but also difference. That actually, what we do, we cooked West Indian food at home. I got the sense that he was happy in Jamaica. Things are not perfect, but I got the sense that he was very happy. And that was a very profound thing to know, that this is what it's like in the West Indies. And obviously, that's not the case for everybody. I could even feel the sunshine from him. And it was one time I went to Jamaica. He lives in Jamaica now. And I said, you know what? All these years, I still don't feel like I'm Jamaican. And he said, don't let anybody tell you that. Don't let anybody tell you that. You're Jamaican. I was like, oh, thank you. Thank you. So in terms of the story, it was my brother. Also, we grew close to a family. This family is called Watson. The family also came from Jamaica, and one of the main people in the family, there was three of them, three children, and they were our age, and we became like one big family. And Yui was the middle child, and he was Jamaican, and he had the drive, he had a passion, he was charismatic, he was a great footballer, and he sadly 3 years ago he passed away. But we're kind of related, because it's actually my wife's nephew, which obviously I didn't know at the time. But in terms of being a Jamaican, he gave us this idea of being strong, being stoic. And it was his funeral 3 years ago, and it's the biggest funeral I've ever seen. And what I said a speech, and I said, this is what legacy is about. This is what community is about. And that's what Yui was about. And that's what I didn't understand about West Indians and Jamaicans and Africans, that we are about community. And when we get stripped away from community into this idea, when I was at school, Obehi, and they were talking about a nuclear family. You heard a nuclear family. And I was like, what are they talking about? I didn't know why were they talking about? Yeah, the next thing is a nuclear family. You have 2.2 children and blah, blah, blah. And when I used to speak to some of my uncles, they was like, what are they talking about? No, if a child's going to school and they look like they haven't got enough money, you give them you give them a couple of dollars, you go and buy some lunch, and and that experience of community, I think, is the main part of the story that I gathered from my brother, and I got from my dear friend Yui, that's what we're about, but also about beauty, about art. There's a woman, a famous Jamaican woman. Her name's Louise Bennett. So Louise Bennett is an advocate for the Jamaican language. She says we should talk patois. She's a famous poet. And the interesting thing is, she used to go to school with my mum. And my mum used to say, oh yeah, I used to go to school with Louise Bennett. And it's that richness of being West Indian, Jamaican, or African that I didn't know that we had. Richness of how we behave, which is of our music, our story, our heritage, the richness of our art, and the country, and our spirit. So I don't know if this is answering the question, but if you don't have that connection, you feel impoverished. You feel like, riches aren't just money. It's not even money. It's about you. It's what's in you and what you connect with. So, to answer your question, I got that definitely from my brother and a few other people, but but also from Yui as well.
Mhm. All right, can you tell me more about this method of transmission of this information among you? Is it okay now among the African diaspora, particularly those that are coming from, let's say, West Africa or Nigeria to be specific in this case? They organize churches, and in this churches, what I've understand because I've gone around in my research trying to understand this community, because this podcast actually is coming from that research. I've written 2 books about it. Uh,
Yeah,
in that even the church that they organize here is not really like the European church. It's different, no? The energy there is different. The way
yeah,
they organize themselves, not just the dressing now, but the relationship between them and this God, even though it's a European concept of God, is even different, no? So this is the African way of living the community, no? Yet sometimes it is part of the ghettoization of ourselves, or not wanting to be part of the larger society, the European society. But it's also the reason behind it is also part of the rebellion, because we don't want to lose everything that we have and just embrace Europe wholeheartedly. We want to have something of our own. For this reason, people sort of tend to organize themselves like this so that they can eat their food, do their own discussion, and even worship in different ways. So this is a way of passing on their story. This is something very deep that we can explore actually, but I'm just on the surface now. So let's leave it on the surface there. So which are the ways that this story was passed on that you know of the Jamaicans in UK in this sense? Because now, for you to be able to know this story, it means that it has been passed on to you. And what is very funny about human narration, about human story, is not that they will just tell you, hey, come, let me tell you about this story. No, you just live. By living, you come to be part of it. You know it, the thing that you are supposed to know. So tell me about these rituals.
okay, okay. So music, music, that's it. So I didn't know the depth of why they're singing like that. Incidentally, today I'm going with my wife to the Bob Marley. It's a exhibition that Bob Marley's daughter has done in the Saatchi Gallery. So the transmission, this is so interesting, was music. So it's it's a physical, literal, and spiritual vibration that gets you understanding this story. That's how it came across. The other part was films. So there was one film called The Harder They Come, with I forgot the guy's name, Jimmy Cliff, and there's other films called Countryman, and there's another film with a group called Aswad. So these are the films that are telling us the story. I don't know if it wasn't really pertaining to religion, um, but I suppose Caribbean people and African people came, and like you said, they wanted to bring that. So that way, that was I don't know if that was transmitted to us enough, because I remember my mum wanted to go to church, and she said they wouldn't let her go to Church of England, so we went to another church. Um, so yeah, how the story is transmitted about our philosophies, our obviously Jamaicans very Christian, and then moved into Rastafarianism, and that was really a powerful medium for me, a young Black British, to get my head around and understand, why are they doing that? What does it mean? They wanted to separate the idea. I think it's Sizzler that sings a song about "Don't give me no white God." I was like, what? Why is he saying that? Is there something else that I'm missing? So the idea of peeling off into the beautiful word that you used, I like that word, the transmission of what's coming to us. And as you said, we're living it too. So it was through music and a small amount of film. And a few people telling a story. As I said, we weren't that deep into religion. But one thing I will say to you, one thing that's important is money. So I know every African and Caribbean country has this thing, and I don't know what it's called. In Jamaica, we call it partner. So partner is like a saving system where every week you drop money to somebody in the community. And then let's say I give, £10 every week to somebody in my family. And that means we can use that to, buy a bed, buy a car, put a deposit down for a house, start a business, all sorts of things. When I was doing my work in financial literacy, I understood that all African countries do it. South Asian countries do it as well. So that was another part of the kind of story that we didn't know and was not taught by being in this country. And that's because that's an important building block of where we go forward as Africans about, understanding that. And the thing about that concept, where you would literally go to someone's house and say, "Oh, hi, Mrs. Brown, here's the partner for this week." What happens there? You're talking to Mrs. Brown. You're seeing Mrs. Brown's children, Mrs. Brown's family, other people that come. So there's a communication. So as time went by and we got involved with banks, that communication goes missing because banks don't want to tell you how to invest your money or how to build your community. So that was another transmission, if you like, that we had that was part of our heritage. You have this in Nigeria.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
You see, now this is why I love this thing that I'm doing here. Because now we are sort of unveiling the integrity of our culture. These are the ropes that are tying the people together, and we must understand that they are important. I think it was in 2009, I wrote one of my books. It had to do with African children. In this case, about me, it's sort of an autobiography where I talked about how children grew up in Africa, how I grew up in Africa, as it were. No? So I talked at a point about our culture, a certain way that you behave as children, which of course is not really peculiar only to African children. It's everything, everywhere. Because later the book will be reviewed by some anthropologists here, and they will openly say, this is what you are describing is exactly how we live here too. Unfortunately, most of these things, we are losing it here. So basically, I'm talking about the human culture here. But one thing I'm trying to point out there is that the human culture is so sophisticated, the way it is designed. The sophistication is also very subtle in that you almost don't feel it because it is a way that you get into it, you live it every day. You don't understand that you are living a sophisticated life. For example, nobody tell you that this is what you are going to do. You just know that this is what you are going to do as children now, learning how to play the game. In that kind of game that I was using as an example there in the case of Nigeria, where I grew up, I talked of children going to hunt lizard. We take the catapult, go to hunt lizard, we kill the lizard, we go to hunt small birds and things like that. And I said in the book at a point, all these things, nobody taught us. And all these things at a point, we stopped doing them. Nobody told us to stop. And those who were younger than us keep on doing it. So then you ask your question, how do you get it woven in this web of cultural thing, in these activities? So it becomes important when you begin to decode this cultural thing one by one. So as a people, it is important that we learn how it functions because our children are going to need them. Unfortunately, of course, our children, my son, for example, now is 4 years. He doesn't have those kind of experience, but because he's living in a different kind of world. He wasn't born in Africa, so he doesn't understand that. He lived the kind of life that is lived here in Europe. But of course, through me, I'm going to tell him how I live so that he can see if that kind of life that I live make any sense to him, well, it's left for him to make sense out of it, no? He can say, okay, daddy, that is stupid, I'm not interested.
Yeah,
That
you
is his
can't
own
explain it.
choice. But I'm going to have to do my part by telling him, son, this has been my journey. This is where I'm coming from. This is what I did at your old age. But it is your choice. Do what you like. No? All right. You were saying something important before, no? That there was this Jamaica linguistics. And language is one of the most important part of our culture also that we need to understand. So this woman was telling you to speak a Jamaican language. Can you explain a little bit what was her justification for speaking patois?
Before I answer that question, I got to just touch on what you just said, because you're saying something too interesting. Right. So, fish, yeah, fish don't know that they're in water. They don't know. The water has a vibration that affects the fish. That means fish behave in a certain way and do certain things. Um, I don't think fish come out and say, what is this? What's going on? This is water. Oh, we're living in water. In the same way that the culture that we're in, in terms of our DNA. I was listening to a podcast last week, and there was this. It was Oprah Winfrey and this other gentleman, Johan Hari, his name is, and he was saying about a project where, children in America are not playing outside anymore. So they created a project. It wasn't him, but somebody created a project where they would go out and play and be safe. And interestingly enough, what did they do? They went and built camps. They went and explored. They went and tried to do hunting and all of that. So it is something very deep rooted in, I think, everybody's DNA. How, I don't know how you teach children to do it in this kind of sanitized, so-called sanitized place where you're not allowed to go out and you have to stay in front of a screen. But it's interesting how do we know? I remember when you were talking, I remember my brother and myself, we had a pram, a pushchair, and he said, let's make a go-kart. So we made a go-kart, and we got our hands dirty, we got cuts and scrapes, and I tore up my coat, and I never had so much fun. So it's very important, I think, that we don't lose that idea of the story, one, but the ability to let children explore on their own, and use their own imagination, because that idea of imagination has been extracted from us and then you can have your imagination by playing a PlayStation or by watching television. So yeah, what you said is interesting. So this is not a woman that I met. It was a woman that I used to see on television and hear on the radio. And what her justification was is the rhythm and the flow of the language. It resonated with us. It's something that the language is a derived from, I think it might be Twi, the Ghanaian language. So it's got the language has soul. There's words in there that we say, Guan or Dea, Medea, which when I look back now and I think it's just language, but it's got resonance. And the language, I think what she was trying to say, it connects a timeline. If you dismantle your language, you're starting to dismantle your culture, and not having that as your primary go-to way of communicating. I think what she was trying to say is going to lead to disaster, because you can tell a story in your dialect that you can't tell it like that in English, or you can't tell that story like that in Italian. So I think, again, Louise was a storyteller, and she was as I said, a poet. And I think that was the important part of a cultural theme that she wanted to ensure that was alive, and awake and able to connect with ourselves too, but our ancestors and our friends and our family. And, so there's a lineage. And that's what I think she was trying to teach us.
That is very important. And we have to pass that down to the generation that are coming also after us, because that is the only way we connect. If we do a deep research, we'll come to understand that is how um, the people that were taken away from Africa managed to even have a semblance of identity, managed to build it and able to rebel despite the calculated
Yeah,
work that was done by the enslaver to detach
yeah,
them, to make sure they don't connect, to make sure they don't speak the same language. There was a calculated work done there, but yet, because human beings are so sophisticated, somehow they manage to know a lot of things and manage to codify most of their communication. Because if you cannot communicate, you cannot operate. And if you cannot operate,
mm,
what are you? Just a
yeah,
small tool for other persons to manipulate.
mm.
All right, storytelling. This is what we have been talking about here today. And I understand that you love storytelling and you are a storyteller. Now, tell us, how do you embark on your storytelling? What do you do in your storytelling work?
It's not really work that I do. It's a way that I feel. I think I feel it, and I feel like it compels me to write. It compels me to speak. It compels me to listen, and learn. Um, so I think you put together all of these things, my past, growing up in England, having different challenges, not having, specific role models. I think it gives me the idea, the concept that we need heroes, small heroes and big heroes, of all sorts. And, my nephew at the moment is living in Ghana. And he said, you know, this is a place where, you know, giants have come from. And so I want to hear more about that. I want to understand that. I want to feel that. I want to know how, going through particular challenges can be done. I want to be able to pass that on. So I feel like I'm a person that, any idea that somebody's got, so long as it's safe and it's not going to hurt anybody, I will encourage them. And that's part of my story of being able to have that desire to encourage people to be their best, not just be their best, because that's not one thing, but be passionate about things. And in order to do that, you have to be congruent. So you have to be that person doing that, so that they can see, this person is a anthropologist, or this person is a footballer, and they're passionate about footballer, or that they're passionate about what they want to do. So I do my storytelling through feeling. Um, I'm a photographer. That's my first love. And I realized, I was looking at some of my pictures, and there's a little tiny part of me in each of those photos. And people will look at that photo and they will see something completely different. That's part of how I would tell a story, by listening. What's your story? What's your story? And your story, oh yeah, so your story's like that. That's the funny thing is, my story is a bit like that. So we connect. So storytelling isn't a one-way thing where you tell a story and then it's transmitted to the other person. Storytelling is the bit in the middle. Even when people hear the word, "Oh, I'm going to tell you a story," their whole demeanor changes. They want to listen. They can't wait. When you say it to your son, he's excited. Daddy, what's the story? He wants to know. But he is the story. The storyteller's the story. The story is the story. And the person receiving the story is the story, because they're looking at that story. Oh my God, he was in the forest. I wonder what I would do if I was in the forest and there was I could hear a sound and it was dark. It's about you. The story is about you. And there's the elegance of the storyteller is making sure that it's a decent story. It's got to be a good story, that people feel connected to it. So the great storytellers they're able to tell the story in such a way that people feel connected to it. It might be a little bit surreal, but still it's something that people can kind of relate to. So if you ask me that, that's what I would say. It's like, that's how I would tell a story. I'd feel it.
That's great. Now, what do you think are the real benefit of storytelling? Looking at the conversation that we have had today about our culture, our origin, where we are coming from. So, within this context, what do you think is the importance of us Africans telling our story?
The importance is many things. I think the importance is legacy. You know, it's legacy. You can get a book. I'm resting my phone on a book, right? This book was written by Carl Jung, who passed away. That's a legacy. This is a legacy. It's writing his story. It's the memoirs of Carl Jung. Um, so first and foremost, the storytelling is a legacy. It's a simple, beautiful way to pass on an idea. Um, I think it's about, connectivity, about seeing yourself in this, and also seeing your possibilities, your challenges, your differences, your opportunities. That there were people like you that think like you, that have different ways of going about their life, but some of them like you. And it's about making the past not fade away, but what's in the past, Sankofa, like what's in the past that's useful, that we can kind of feel today when you're reading it, that will have effect and meaning for you and your family and your community. Storytelling is about also having, characters in there that you can relate to. And they might be outside of your understanding. Later on, they'll be like, oh, I can see why that character gave up, or I can see why that character carried on, or whatever. So I think for young people, that's what it's about. I was doing some work just last year, and this girl I met, young person girl, said that she was going for a job. I said, why are you going for this job? Oh, because I have to, blah, blah, blah. I got talking to her, and that was not her passion, that job. So I said, what is it that you're passionate about? And she said, animation. And I said, oh, interesting. Not that I should be surprised. She was a Black girl. Not that I should be surprised that she's doing animation. And I said, oh, what is it? The story that you're telling, what is it about? She said, it's about a girl on a ship, and the ship is traveling from the West Indies to England. But the girl looks over the side of the ship and falls in the sea. And then in the sea, she realized that she can breathe and she can discover all sorts of things. And I said, oh my God, that's so interesting. You have to keep writing the book, because when we talk about Windrush, Windrush, they don't talk about the sea. It's just this boat. The boat came to England. Boom. There were so many things that happened in between that. People got on a boat. How did they feel when they got on the boat? They had children. Did the children play? What clothes did they wear? What games did they play? What was they doing when they were looking at the water? What was their dreams? What were their fears? And all of this. And this girl wrote this book. And I said, it wasn't a book, it's an animation. And I said to her, you have to continue. So that's the importance of the story, that we see ourselves, and some of the ideas are creative, and which are things that aren't going to happen, then it is fun. And some of the things can give us this idea of the fullness of who we are, who we were, what we are, and what we can do. And I think those elements are there's like just a few dots, but they're not joined up as a line. So storytelling helps to create that smooth line between going forward to how I would tell these stories to my grandchildren, and how you would tell the stories to your son. And sometimes I don't know what you're talking about. God, what are you talking about? That don't make any sense. And it's not until later and later that I think, okay, And the other thing about the story, Obia, is that it's a code. There's a code in the story, and the code is, this is about you. This is about how you could live. This is about um, morals. This is about ethics and principles. This is about our unity and our strength.
That's powerful. That's interesting. All right. You talked also about financial literacy and teaching a program that you have. Do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah. So I don't teach that program anymore, but I'm very passionate about it. So I think what I used to do is we used to do the program in a practical way, but also psychological way. So just, I mean, before the talk, I was thinking, well, what am I going to talk about money? And I think what I wanted to say is that money isn't power. Money is not power. Money is just money. It's just a piece of paper or digital or whatever. I think that we need money to make sure that we can feed our children, feed ourselves, and put fuel in our vehicles or put the light on. But it's not power. And I think what I realize is communication is power. That's what power is. And if there's something, what I used to do is get people to write down, what do you spend money on every day, every week? Where does your money go to? What are you, what are you, how do you budget? How do you plan? How do you work together with your family? How do you teach your children about money? And what does money mean to you? And so eliciting the feeling that what money means to you. What does it mean to you? One, and what do you do with it? And how do you teach your children to be good money managers? Because whether they're living on their own or they're living with a partner, money's going to come into it somewhere, somehow. So it's being honest with what you're going to do with it, how you're going to spend it, how you can invest it, how you're going to save it, how you're going to plan so that you don't go into debt. And because when that thing happens, that you can communicate about it. So the program was dynamic in the sense of looking at, what does it mean today? How do you get out of debt? How do you plan? How do you budget? How do you invest? And how do you feel? Because the feeling impacts what you do. If you feel like, oh my God, I've worked hard all month, I'm gonna go and drink, or at the end of the week, I'm gonna drink or smoke weed or whatever because I've worked so hard. And then the next thing you know, you haven't got any money. And then that's going to create another feeling. And then you're going to get dependent on that and so on and so forth. So that's how I used to teach it. I used to get people to talk. I used to get people to look at pictures of money and talk about what it means. I used to get them to write their weekly income and outgoings in a way that was interesting. And it was not an easy program to do because I found a lot of people didn't want to talk about money. I found that we were working in schools at the time, and the schools were not very supportive because it was not part of the curriculum, which is, I just found it so interesting that we had to kind of push ourselves. I was working for this charity. We had to push ourselves into the school to be able to do that. And I used to talk to people that have left university. And I'd say, you went to university, you studied whatever, engineering or anthropology. What did they teach you about money? What do you mean? There's no classes about money. But all of this time, you're going to college, school, university to get a job, to get a good job, so that you get money, right? Yeah. So that was my passion, to kind of bring to life that bit, why I don't know, of money that is, it's like the water. We're in water, we're in money. Let's talk about it. It's just a thing. Let's talk about it. And one of the things that you were saying earlier about why our defenses are broken is because we're not talking about money. We're not talking about, what do you do with your money? Where do you spend your money? Where do you buy that suit? Is it can I go and get a discount? What if I want to buy a camera? Do you know a black camera shop that I can go to and get a deal? Or, if we want to pool our money together and we want to buy a building. I don't know if I saw this film on Apple TV called The Bankers. I didn't even know that this was a true story about two Americans that decided to buy up all these buildings in America. And then one day they had the audacity to buy a bank. And then they thought, oh, let's buy another bank. So they bought another bank. It's Samuel Jackson and I forgot the other actor. Yeah, they bought these banks in America in the 60s. So why can't we do that? So we have to start somewhere. We have to start with, let's be honest, let's talk about it. I've only got £10. Oh, you got £10? We'll spend 9. Or you got £10? Give me £1 and let's go and buy a fishing boat. Whatever. So I had to move away from that because there was not enough people that wanted to do it. People just consume with other things, sadly.
And that is really a very important conversation that we can have, especially for the fact that we are talking of the money in the community, because we know that it's not really that. Anyway, I think I'm saying this quite often now, that there is no money within the diaspora community. It's not that there is no money. The question is that we are not really accountable for the money. The money is coming and is going away. We are not controlling the money. And this is true all over, whether you are looking at the African community in the United States, the UK, in Canada, in many places. Of course, there are some few individuals you can point out on who have been able to organize the money. I'm not saying how rich you are. I'm just saying how to make sure that the money that is coming into the community is also spent in the community to help the community grow. Because in most of the cases, what we have is that the money comes, some other persons come and take the money. Of course, not that they come to steal it, but they organize some program to help it go. If we haven't yet understood how money works, we don't yet understand how that is happening. But if we understand how it works, we need to sign into programs that are going to be favorable to the community. All right. Now, the question I wanted to ask you while we move to the end of the episode is, what do you think the effect of this program that you were doing was going to lead to the community?
So the objective is to be able to talk to your children about money, to stop the kind of, it's like you've got something on the wall and somebody puts wallpaper on it and then somebody puts paint on it and then the thing is still there. So what I wanted to do is to get people to peel it off and peel it off. And this is what money's about. This is what we can do. This is what we can think about. And so that as a grandfather and as a father, that I talk to my children about money. What to do with your money? Do you need any help? Are you putting your money into this? Are you putting it into that? That is not a subject. It doesn't need to be taboo. So that was my hope, that people would actually speak about money. The more we speak, the more we learn. The more we learn, the more creative we can be. And the more creative we can be, the more self-sufficient we can be. But it starts with talking. It starts with talking. I talked to many families and they didn't talk to anybody about money. Even their husbands or their wives didn't talk about it. And they told me that they were in debt, that they're struggling, that they've had to take out high interest loans. So as a community, that's one thing that we need to fix. If you're in debt, there's places you can go to sort out the debt. There's no shame in it. It happens to all of us. And then once, in coaching, there's a phrase, and the phrase is, I'm okay, you're okay. So we need to be okay. Yeah, and we need to know that our brothers and sisters are okay. So I think that's what I wanted to do, is to have that freedom to be at that safe place, to be able to say, I remember speaking to one woman and she said, oh, oh, I don't want to do the program. I spend so much money on shoes. So I said, shoes? I said, oh, how much shoes do you have? She said, you see this wardrobe, right? We was in a house where they did a workshop. And I said, yeah. She said, if you imagine all of that wardrobe is filled with shoes and more, and I'm spending my money on shoes, right? So my therapy comes on. Why? Why are you doing that? Something's missing. Something's missing from you, but then you're taking something out from your family's legacy. So for me, talking about money means the possibility of a legacy. And that's what we can't talk about with confidence like other communities can talk about a legacy. But it has to start without us being honest about what is happening today. Why? Can we buy a house for an investment? Who knows about it? Or, can you buy your next meal? So that's what I wanted. That's what my hope was for doing that work. That a conversation continues through our young people.
How will somebody connect with you? Is there any offer that you have out there? This is the moment we usually give to our guests to advertise themselves and connect with the community. Please go ahead in a few seconds.
Oh, okay. So I'm not selling anything at the moment. I'm creating stuff, but it's not finished. But yeah, you can find me on Instagram or on LinkedIn. That's it, really.
That's good.
If
That's
you've got
good.
any problems, just email me. I'll help.
All right. Now, looking at this conversation that we have to date just now, how do you think storytelling can be better done to promote our image in the world? Because you said something that I really pay attention to, that the power really is a communication. If you're able to tell a good story, that is even more expensive than money now. So how do you think we should be able to tell better story about ourselves and the community, I mean the African and the African diaspora, so that we can have that which is more important than money?
I think what we need to do is to tell the story, right? That's one. I think we need to be creating stories through film, art, music. Your life is a story. I think we need to tell it. My father was a entrepreneur, and he traveled to Africa and he traveled to Italy actually in the 50s, which was remarkable. But what I didn't get is the whole story. So you have to tell your story to your family. I think the other thing that people need to do is to turn up and listen, actively go to where those stories are being told from Africans, from West Indians, from people in the diaspora. Go to find them, whether it's on a podcast, whether it's a book, whether it's on, I think I've got some books in here that's written by Black people, films, music. Be part of it. Dance, be part of it. Go and support those people that are telling those stories. You'll be surprised how it inspires you. So I think that's the important thing to do, to continue and rebuild rather an idea of how the story means. Is to go and find those stories, look out those podcasts, look out those films, look out those books, look out those music that are kind of telling you a story, and tell your story, and make sure you tell your children a story. They will. The funny thing about children is they'll be like, oh yeah, daddy, you told me that story so much time, you tell me the story, bloody hell. Next thing you know, they'll be telling their children that story, and they'll be feeling that story, and they'll be part of that story. So I think that's what we need to do, is to, and I think it would be interesting to create a space of storytelling, to create a space of listening, to create a space of creating. If we just sat down, look, I don't know you, but we've just been talking, creating. We have a story now. We can go back and say, oh, I talked to this gentleman, Delberth. I talked to this gentleman, Obehi, in Italy. That's a story, and we don't know. So as the story starts to unfold, characters start to come in, characters start to leave, events start to happen. So so I suppose my point is, we can create a story. If we just sat down in a space, I believe in space, that's my things. We just sat down in space, I bet you a story would emerge. So I think that having our own theatres, our own writing spaces, as a creative person, sometimes you get inspiration by nature, but a lot of times you get inspiration by being around people that are creative as well. So that's what I think, that we need, that space to be creative, that space to connect, and that space to be able to listen to and feel and see and listen to other storytellers that are like us.
That's powerful. All right. Now, is there any other thing you would like to add to the conversation? Maybe that is something more important you wanted to say to conclude it. Please go ahead.
No, not really. I think what I do really appreciate is the ability to speak. We are all people that need a form of expression, and I think that as a man, as a black man, that in living in this Western place, that our expression is repressed. So I just want to thank you for having the space to allow people to express themselves. Because what happens, a lot of things get repressed and pushed down. And I see a lot of mental health happening. I see a lot of anxiety happening. I see a lot of different psychological problems happening. So things get repressed. So I just want to say thank you for having this space, and definitely listening and being able to allow that space of getting stuff out, stuff that nobody's asked me before, stuff that I had, I paused, I had to think about things. So as a kind of coming from a psychological point of view, however you're going to express it, you need to, so long as I say, whether that's, I've got my journal there, writing, speaking. So I want to thank you with my heart to allow that space for us to express. And I encourage everybody to listen. You'll find something, and also find your passion and find your expression too.
Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. It's been an honor here. So everyone listening, find your old tree and make it grow.
Thank you very much, sir. Bless you.
Thank you. If you enjoyed this podcast, make sure you subscribe so you never miss any of our future episodes. Rate and review Obehi podcast and share with your friends who might need it. I remain Obehi Ewafo. Thank you so much for listening, and talk to you in the next episode.